Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 8 of On the Fly. Today, I have the pleasure of being joined by co-founder of DAHA, Dr. Kelly Henderson. Kelly, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good.
Very good. How are you?
I am well. I also realised that you've just recently joined Morgan Sindall on an interim basis to do some work on a vulnerability project as well. So it seems like you're certainly keeping yourself busy.
Yes, that would be correct. Yes, I started there last week and it's a really exciting project.
Lovely. Well, the reason I wanted to bring you on today, Kelly, is you're a huge advocate for domestic abuse, obviously anti-domestic abuse in the sector. You're a co-founder of DAHA, which is obviously the Domestic Abuse Housing Alliance. So one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on is kind of understand the caveat for why you set the organisation up. What were the reasons for it? It's an area that I must admit I'm quite naive to, so I'm really keen to kind of understand it, as I know that it's always relevant, and especially at the moment with lockdown as well. Could you tell us like kind of the reasons that you set it up?
Yeah, well, actually, it goes back quite a long way. So I did my it feels a bit like This Is Your Life. I did my placement at university at a women's refuge. And at that time, one of my roles at the refuge was to accompany women to present as homeless, who'd fled domestic abuse, left their homes, their possessions, and lots of loved things back in the home. So my job was to, as I say, accompany women to present as homeless, and then kind of experience their whole process of trying to get a house and what happened when they got a house, and the knockbacks and all of that. So I would say that it was nearly 30 years ago now that I was involved in that, and that's kind of really really stayed with me, that experience that the women had, and having to go local authority council and kind of tell some of your story. And I just always felt that was really really horrendous. And then going through the experience of going to visit properties with women and trying to find accommodation and all of that really left, I would say, an indelible mark on me. So fast forward a good few years later, and in my role as the violent crime and domestic abuse lead for a local authority, I had invited the Home Office to visit a women's refuge. And you know what it's like when you invite these big cheeses to visit something, and you hear about these day in, day out problems, about problems with the court, with the police not taking things seriously, all sorts of things. And so we went to the refuge, and the Home Office big cheeses were there, and then we had a meeting with the women, and the women, I'd said to the women kind of what needs to be changed, what needs to be improved, how are things with the police, how are things with the court, blah, 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 all of those things. And the women were just like, oh, actually, the police were quite good, this was quite good. And all the things that I used to hear day in, day out were kind of not being brought up to the Home Office. I was like, oh my God, you've got this one chance to really, tell them everything. And so just to kind of keep the conversation moving on, really, I'd said, well, what about, when you move on from here? What about when you get a house? Or what about leaving your home? How did that feel? And I would say from that moment, honestly, the floodgates just really opened, with women telling me their most horrendous experiences of, how they were treated by their housing provider, how they weren't supported, but in some cases, how they were really supported and how their housing provider had actually saved their life. So the real difference between housing providers and their response and understanding to domestic abuse was really quite stark. And I remember when we left the refuge just thinking, I've got to do something about this. And then the Home Office at the time as well, the lead person there was like, oh my goodness, that's kind of something that needs to be addressed. Yep. So I went back to the office and said, I need to do something about this. And at that time, in local authority, lots of competing issues going on, and then my manager said, well, it's not really our business. And so I was like, oh no, I need to do something. So I'd contacted a couple of colleagues, and from there decided that I was going to have to do something. So wrote a bit of a plan really about how we could do something, as a housing sector to recognise and respond to domestic abuse. Wrote a plan and then presented that to a local housing provider. A big shout out for Michelle Meldrum here, and just said, I think you need to do something about this, and kind of, I would say from there, you know, I was taken on and managed to meet some absolutely brilliant people who had the same ideas as well, and we decided that, you know, as 3 organisations together, all trying to do the same thing, all recognised in different experiences really that we'd all had, that this was a big national issue and we want to do something about it. So I would say from there we decided that we would work together and set up the Domestic Abuse Housing Alliance. And our first meeting, I travelled down to London, and I remember we were in a laundry room at Peabody for our first meeting, you know, the glamour. And you know, when you just kind of hit it off with somebody and you've got the same ideas, and so the 3 of there was me, Megan and Goody, the 3 of us all just were like blah blah blah, and we just couldn't shut up, and we had so many ideas, and Megan was the you know, the queen of the flip chart, and we were all just kind of on the same page. And I think, you know, in your work and life you don't get those experiences very often where, you know, you're really all on the same page and you really want to do something and you know you can make a difference. So I would say that kind of as I say, 30 years ago to then obviously 7 years ago, you know, meeting the right people and being supported by Michelle Meldrum to make that difference. And I remember just listening to the voice of women and their experiences and thinking, we've got to do something about this. So, you know, luckily enough, I was able to get a job to do that role within, and I resigned from my job where they said I couldn't do anything about it. And I just think it's kind of when somebody tells you that you can't do something, that's kind of probably the push that I always need. When somebody says, no, you can't do that, I'm like, well, I think you'll find I can. So
your inner rebellious nature type of thing.
Definitely, yes.
I'm saying when I'm told I can't do something, but
Yeah.
I was reading through over, you know, I knew this call was coming up, so I wanted to kind of really get an understanding of DAHA, reading through the kind of information on the website and all the kind of the blog, you know, all the writings that have come out, as it were. And I know one of the kind of reasons is to work with the housing sector, to assist them in any way possible, highlight certain things. But for me as well, and again, apologies for my naivety on this, but, you know, I was reading about, you know, people who are on this homeless and on the street and how that affect them and how they're at risk. Also as well, you know, I'm not just saying this because I am a man, but obviously males suffer from domestic abuse as well, not as much as on the women ratio, but really eye-opening for me, really, I guess is the way to describe it. And how have you found working with the housing sector? Because I speak to many people, all mannerisms of life in the sector, and some people who kind of, I'm a recruiter, I provide into the housing sector. You yourself provide kind of a consultancy advice service. Do you find that some providers are more open than others, or do you find that everyone is actually, wow, this is a really important topic, let's work with you in collaboration?
I think it's quite different, really. So I remember when we first set up DAHA, obviously, as you'll realise, I'm no longer there, and I'm talking about my role as a co-founder. But I would say that when we set up, it was when the 1% rent decrease was kind of being brought into place. So you can imagine that people were making redundancies, and people were, you know, I suppose, you know, combining roles and doing lots of things. So I think we started at a very odd time. So I think that's when we decided that we want to do an accreditation service to really measure how housing providers were responding to domestic abuse, how they recognised and how they responded to that. So, you know, we had lots of people who were really interested in saying, actually, we've never really thought about this before, to those other people who were saying, yeah, actually, we've been doing this for quite a long time. And, you know, we're really way down the road of you know, providing a good response. So I would say right across the sector, we had massive support from, you know, lots of different people. We had, you know, obviously Alison Inman chose the domestic abuse as her theme for her presidency. And then we were super lucky that James Strang, who took over as the CIH president, also chose domestic abuse as well. And I think that's the first time it's happened where you've had 2 CIH presidents who've chosen, you know, the same theme. So we were lucky that we had, you know, 2 really passionate, strong, driven presidents who really want to make a difference. And I think, you know, having that really made such a difference. And I remember when I started in the organisation that, you know, I started in as well, I remember that it really has to come from the top. So it's all right, somebody, you know, someone like me who was a business manager being really passionate, but you actually need, you know, your board members, you need your chief exec and everybody at an level to be really behind you. So I think what we did find was that there was lots of people who were really passionate, but the trick and the key was that it really needs to come from, for want of a better phrase, it needs to come from the top down and the bottom up to really, you know, make a difference. And I think when we working with the CIH and Women's Aid to develop the Make a Stand pledge, that was just four key pledges that housing providers could do. And I think that really, I would say that really got lots of people behind us and lots of people thinking, well, actually, what can we do? And really questioning themselves and being, as you know, the question was, were people quite honest? And I think that some people were really honest and saying, can you come in and can you just tell us, you know, where we're going wrong, what we need to do? So we had a real good range of people and people who, and I think it must be quite difficult to say, actually, we aren't very good at this. We want you to come in and tell us, you know, how we can improve. So I think fair play to those organisations who really opened the doors to us. And there's been some absolutely brilliant people to work with who I'll remember throughout my whole career, that, you know, you meet somebody who's who might not know anything about domestic abuse, but it's for them, it's all about kind of the difference that they can make to their customers, and it's kind of, you're on the same page with that. So I've met some absolutely brilliant people, and it's just been really positive. And as I say, I think that we've managed to infiltrate the housing sector quite a lot, and to get lots of people, lots of brilliant people behind us as well.
Great. No, yeah, because obviously I've seen, you know, I saw your name before we even started talking, type of thing. So you're doing a good job of getting yourself out there and about. And kind of my second question I wanted to ask today, obviously we've been through lockdown, and I think you've probably seen with anybody because of domestic abuse rising considerably throughout lockdown and what's been going on at the moment. What are the ways that people can kind of combat that in the housing sector, do you think? You know, we had a conversation which I found very fascinating just before we went online with the work that you're doing with Morgan Sindel, how the work you're going to be doing is training operatives who go into a property to look for the signs of domestic violence and what can they see and help with. And I guess, how can people combat that, especially at the moment, as it's probably more prevalent than it's ever been, I guess, as well?
Yeah, and I think at the beginning of lockdown, I know that one organisation said that they actually had threefold in the number of people contacting them for support around domestic abuse. So I think it really shows that, you know, as a housing provider, we have a unique relationship with our tenants. And so, you know, if I was a victim survivor of domestic abuse, I might not want to contact the police. I might not want to go to a specialist domestic abuse charity because I might, you know, not think what I'm experiencing is domestic abuse, or I might feel really worried about that I've never had contact with that organisation before. So I would say that, you know, in our unique position, I know from, you know, previously being a housing officer, you really get to know the people on your patch, and you get to know, you know, what's happening, and you strike up a really good relationship a lot of the time. So I suppose that using that unique relationship to see what's going on in a property, and I think for me it's all about having, you know, thinking domestic abuse in every situation. So obviously I would say that, and I always think domestic abuse in every situation, but it's really about pulling all of those strands together. So a piece of research that I'd commissioned from Save Lives showed you that, you know, 1/5 of repairs were related to domestic abuse in one housing provider. So I think it's about understanding what, you know, repairs, it's about understanding rent arrears, and there's brilliant organisations, Surviving Economic Abuse, who are really doing absolutely outstanding work around economic abuse, and how as housing providers we can identify that and do something about that. So it's, you know, I think it's about not just saying, oh, it's rent arrears, or oh, they've had that repair done a few times. It's about going, well, why have they had that repair done a few times? Let's investigate that a little bit more. And I think it's even more crucial in the current climate that, you know, where people are isolated, and, you know, and there's a threat. Obviously I work in the northeast, and there's a threat that, you know, some of the areas in the northeast are, you know, on the watch list. at the minute. So, people could go back into further lockdown. So I think it's really incumbent upon us as housing providers to look at the evidence that we have in our day-to-day role and not just see it as someone else's job, or just to be really tunnel vision, or well, I deal with rent arrears. So it's about looking at, okay, there's rent arrears here. What's that about? There's repairs. What are those repairs about? And just really piecing everything together to create a picture. And I also think as housing providers, a lot of the information that we have on our website and our social media is absolutely crucial. If you think about it, if I'm living in a property and I was a victim, survivor of domestic abuse, I might not easily be able to access, specialist domestic abuse charities' websites easily. And some, Women's Aid, Refuge, etc., Save Lives, who provide absolutely brilliant information, really helpful information, but I might not have the confidence to do that. So I think if we can, just put things on our website about, this is domestic abuse. Do you know that we can help? Here's the national helpline number. Here's the male victim helpline number. And also, if you want support around addressing your abusive behaviour, having the helpline number for Respect, which provides support to people who do want to address their abusive behaviour. So I think it's about us not just saying, well, this is what we do. It's about us looking at what we can do and what information we can provide. And I think if I was a victim, survivor of domestic abuse, I maybe would find it more easy to access the website and then be able to explain that and say, well, actually, I was just seeing when the housing office was going to be open, so I can go down and I'll pay the rent or whatever, or, I can report the repair. And it would be far more difficult, I imagine, to say, well, actually, I was looking at, the Women's Aid website or Refuge or whatever. So I think if we can support those excellent charities by having that information on our website and really pointing out what domestic abuse is, then I think our customers will be doing our customers a good service by letting them know that we don't tolerate domestic abuse and that we can do something to help, and that we are able to support people. Not everybody wants to ring the police, and not everybody wants to speak to a specialist charity. And I do think that quite often the relationship we have, we can kind of be the conduit between that specialist charity to provide that expert advice. But a lot of the time, it could be that we are the friendly face that they know, and then we can say, well, actually, for me, it might be, well, I can put you in touch with someone from a local organisation. So for me, it might be I can put you in touch with We Aside Women in Need, a brilliant organisation that I started out in. And I think it's about me known enough about those organisations that I can tell customers, well, actually, they do this. And I think sometimes people have got a preconceived idea about what's available and what a refuge might be like, and all other things that go alongside that. So I think it's incumbent upon us to understand domestic abuse, how we can make a difference, but also to kind of have that good partnership working with the organisations that can provide support, so that we are giving our customers proper advice, and we're talking from experience about what can be done, as opposed to just go, well, I don't really know, or well, here's a number. Because with the best will in the world, it's really difficult to pick up a helpline, a phone, to ring a helpline number and say, this is actually happening to me. So I think if we can support customers to make the first move, then I think that's something absolutely crucial that we can do to make a difference.
Excellent. And I think absolutely what I'll do as well, we're going to post this, I'll put some of the links up of the organisations that you mentioned as well, so people can give a click and have a look about what the work they're doing.
That would be great.
Yeah, just I always like to draw attention to for people that I'm speaking to, whatever their passions are and what they're very much involved in. If I could just throw a few links in that will at least draw some attention to it, I'm happy to do so. So yeah, that'd be great.
That would be great. And DAHA have also got a COVID guidance as well. Yeah. So it's on the front page of the DAHA website, and Saranya and Rebecca from DAHA really pulled that together in quick, smart time. So it's definitely worthwhile having a look. If you're a housing provider going, what do I do in COVID? That's a great tool as well. So obviously, as you would expect, I would have to give a shout out to DAHA.
Okay, no top, don't worry, they get fulfilling. So
good.
But Kelly, look, I really appreciated you coming on today, because it's a topic that I myself, like I mentioned, don't know too much about, and maybe others who watch this video don't know too much about. So it's been really insightful for you to come on, talk to us about your journey, the reasons for why you set up, DAHA, the work that you continue to do within domestic abuse prevention. But on a lighter note, where can people find you on the internet? Obviously, think fairly obvious, find you on LinkedIn, but you're a Twitterite similar to me. So where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter as Kelda, which is my real name, God. Kelda Kelly, Kelda_Kelly. I'm on LinkedIn as Kelly Henderson. And yeah, I'm kind of out and about, obviously, and currently working at Morgan Sindall for the next few weeks, doing this really exciting vulnerability project as well. It's happy to talk to anyone in more detail about domestic abuse housing as well. So if anybody would like to contact me, I am on LinkedIn and Twitter, and happy to always talk about domestic abuse and what we can do in the housing sector.
Excellent. And I'll tag you into the post as well, so people can contact you confidentially if they wish. But as you've probably seen in my other videos, are you a waver? Do you wave on video calls to say goodbye?
Well, I will do on this occasion. I feel a bit foolish.
No, don't be. It's British and quirky. So thanks very much for your time, Kelly, and I'll speak to you soon. Take care.
All right. Thanks so much. Take care. Thanks.